Hi there, folks, and welcome to this episode of Michael's Backyard Marina. Now, if you don't know what a wheel bearing going bad sounds like, hopefully I got the audio clip captured on my iPhone, because the iPhone has a very sensitive microphone. And I would kind of give you an idea of the road noise you're hearing inside the car. It has a roaring sound. That's a lot of R's put together that don't stop. And I've had this happen on several cars, and you can actually pinpoint to which wheel bearing is bad by doing a couple of things. If you're questioning whether it's the front, rear, or left or right. Sometimes when you swerve the car back and forth a little bit, don't get violent, don't get crazy, but you'll hear the noise go loud and then softer, then loud, then softer. Whatever wheel, when it goes softer, whatever wheel you're lifting off the ground or taking the pressure off of, it will get quieter, and then gets louder when you straighten back up to normal. That'll indicate which side of the car it's on right there for sure. Obviously front and rear, you can pretty much hear if it's front or rear bearing just by telling where it's coming from inside the car. Well, I've determined that this is a right rear wheel bearing, and it was really evident when I was going on to an on-ramp last night even. I was going around the on-ramp pretty quick, and all of a sudden the back right rear wheel got really quiet. And then as soon as I come off the ramp and straightened up, all of a sudden you hear a roar. It started getting back to that roar again. So yeah, it's a bad wheel bearing for sure. I'm not sure what style this has. I think it's a cartridge style bearing, but that's why I'm in here with you today. I'm gonna pull it apart, see what I've got to buy, get it ordered, get it put back together, and get it back on the road nice and quiet. Let's jack this thing up. I'm not going to show you guys how to jack up a car and where the lift points are and how to safely prop it up with jack stands. That's not my job here. My job here is to show you how to do a wheel bearing. And it's not really a job, it's a hobby. That saves me money. Because if you take this, you guys can call around and find out, if you took this to your local Lexus dealer or a Toyota dealer or whoever works on these cars and get a price on a wheel bearing, well, you're going to pay a really high price for the wheel bearing from that dealer most likely, and you're going to pay a decent amount of labor to get it done. So it'd be interesting if you guys have had this done to leave some comments below if you've had a wheel bearing replaced on a vehicle by an automotive mechanic, a shop, a dealer. I'm just kind of curious what that normally runs, and I'll let you guys know how much I spend for the bearing and how much time it actually takes me to do this job. So you'll have an idea of what you're up against and what you can do. Because you'll find out pretty quick that by the time you buy a few specialty tools if you need them and do the labor yourself, you'll still come out ahead. Just that simple. Anything I use in my videos that are as pertinent to the video as far as tools, impact drivers, socket, wrenches, I'll leave all that stuff in the description below as to what I use. Don't be afraid to follow those links to purchase those tools yourself. And don't forget to like and subscribe. I haven't said that for a long time in the video, and you guys have been doing really good. You've been leaving awesome comments. Love the comments you guys have been leaving. Amazing. Let's jump in and see what we can figure out what's going on and where this noise is coming from. Okay, the first order of business is we got the wheel off. We're going to have to take this nut off. And this nut is not going to be fun to take off. But it does have a dimple right here where you take a punch and you dent that in to basically lock the nut in place. I'm going to have to get in here with a little punch, and I'm going to drive it in there to kind of lift that up so it doesn't give me any more resistance than necessary to take that nut off. I'm going to put a little bit of PB Blaster on here. Not much, just enough to, whoops, just kind of wet things down so it can penetrate and start helping me make it easier to get that stuff off. Now I have a 32 millimeter, is it 32? 30 millimeter 12-point socket. that fits this nut. All right, well, my plans came to a screeching halt. I couldn't get that breaker bar to break that loose. I even had my wife standing on the brakes to make sure I didn't put any extra stresses on anything. And I stood on that breaker bar and it wasn't moving that nut at all. So I quickly started thinking, what's plan B? Well, a really big impact, I'm thinking, is going to get that off of there. And I didn't have a really big impact. But I think I might have mentioned this earlier, is that, you know, sometimes to get these cars fixed is expensive. And especially when you take it somewhere to get fixed, it gets really expensive real quick. And lo and behold, I decided, Michael, it's time to buy a new tool. And I've been wanting one of these for a while. I haven't had a need to buy one, but I thought, man, this is the perfect opportunity. And boy, did I get lucky. Check this monster out. This is the DeWalt 20 volt Max 8 XR. This is a killer. I'm telling you. This came with, it's got a light on there. But this, I got a deal on this. Unbelievable. I got really lucky, I feel. I went to the store. It's a place called Tyson's near us. It's like a farm and fleet store. Maybe you have them near you. Maybe you don't. They had this. This is regularly $319. There was a tag on it that it was on sale. Now this came with the impact. This is a 1/2 inch impact. 1/2 inch. 1/2 inch impact with a 5 amp hour battery and a charger. $100 off. $219. Now yes, that's still a lot of money. I give you that. But, and I came out here, I charged the battery up. It was almost fully charged when I put it in. It's charged up. I put this impact on that nut, and man, it moved it so fast. It backed it right off of there, no problem. I actually, because these aren't impact grade sockets, I had actually bought 2 more sockets. And these are Craftsman sockets. Bought 2 more 30 millimeter sockets in case I split one out, you know, just in case. Because there again, it's 20, 30 minutes to town to get another piece. This thing's got some weight to it. This is not a toy. This is heavy duty, maximum carnage impact here. Now, I'm not sponsored by DeWalt, but I do have a bunch of DeWalt tools, and that's pretty much all I own for impact drivers, drills, Sawzall, you name it, multi-tool. Anyway, that did the trick. There's a fly out here that's going to die. Look, I had the nerve to land on my tool. The fly is no more. All right. Anyway, I just thought I'd share that with you. So this $219 plus another probably $21 in sockets that I bought altogether, because I ended up buying 3 of them. 2 Craftsmans, 1 at AutoZone. I went to AutoZone. I thought, well, I'm gonna price the bearing there, and if it's within $25 of Rock Auto, I can get it today. I can finish this job today, which is now 10 o'clock at night, so I'll be finishing it in the morning. But I'm going to do some more recording here, see if I can get that. I got to get the brake off so I can get the rotor off, so I can get to the bolts that hold this hub in place. Back down on the ground. Let's get after it. What I'm going to be doing next is there's 2 bolts that hold this caliper to the rear axle here, or the rear strut mount, ball joint, bearing carrier, whatever you want to call it. So I got to break these 2 bolts loose, get this out of the way, then I can get this drum jacked off of here. Oh. Okay, with those 2 bolts removed, looks like the brake caliper can just be set right out of the way here. Looks like it'll sit right there and not put any strain on the hose. We gotta get the brake rotor off. And I think I saw on videos where people use these two screw holes here, and that would actually jack the brake rotor away from the hub. Wow, come on, really? Well, folks, you know how when you start off doing a wheel bearing job and it turns into an absolute nightmare? That's what happened to me. I learned that somebody has been in here before, I'm pretty sure, and I discovered a few things that clue me in on that. Made things more difficult than it should have been to start with, and then it got worse from there. That's all I can say. As you can see here, I've got half a trailing arm. This is the trailing arm that's underneath the body up front here that comes back to your rear, I don't know what you call your bearing hub support assembly with all your bushings. So it has connections here, here, two here, and then one like this end that goes on the front end in your trailing arm. Well, let me explain what happened. First thing I want to talk about is the brake rotor, what somebody did wrong to me here, and maybe I'm mistaken, but there's a full round hole here that would allow you access to this little joker right there. And right there, this is your brake adjuster, and this adjusts the brake pads in and out in order to get them to fit properly in your drum, which on this rotor has a drum on the inside. And as you can see, this drum is very rusty. It's not a good braking surface anymore. And we also have some pretty good grooving going on here on this brake rotor. And it's just got a little deeper. But anyway, this hole here is supposed to allow you access so that you can get a screwdriver in here and sit here and boink, 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 and rotate this little doohickey here. Let me get it up real close so you can see it up real close so you can see what I'm talking about. So it allows you to rotate this here so you can collapse it back down like this, which brings your shoes away from the drum. Once you complete that action, then you can use your two, you might have to purchase a couple of these, 8mm bolts. I think they're 8mm by 1 pitch. You can use these if the drum's not loose on the hub, and you can use those to jack the rotor away from the hub. Now typically that's would all go smoothly unless somebody puts this together wrong, which allows you, so if you install the rotor onto here so that it doesn't line up with one of these holes or this cutout, I'm not sure which it's supposed to be. So when you rotate this down around so that the rotor part, this part right here, can be straight down at 6 o'clock basically, so you can gain access to it. Well, somebody put this on wrong, and I got half a hole to work with, and I couldn't get to it. There was no way to get to it because it just wasn't right. So then I was able to actually force the brake rotor off, which was fine. Broke a couple of the little keepers that hold the brake pads in place. Broke those loose when it came out. Minimal damage, minimal cost right there so far, right? Well, I thought, oh cool, I got the brake rotor off, I'm winning. I was not winning. I'm going to see if I can get you in here close enough to see this. As you can see, this is beat over, swedged out. I've hammered on this thing. I put a puller on this thing. I mean, this is my big handheld sledge. And I'm wailing on this thing. Wailing on it. And at first I was trying to be ginger and careful. like, because I don't want to mess these threads up, right? And used a brass punch or big brass piece, and I've tapped on it a few times, and this hub would not let go of the drive shaft spline. Once that happened, I'm like, what the hell? What am I going to do now? How am I supposed to get this apart? If this doesn't come loose from here, I'm screwed. And I did, get through here and get these bolts. There's bolts that hold this wheel hub here. You can align one of these up pretty easily. And you can back out all 4 of these. And then once this shaft is loose, you can actually pop this hub off, put a new hub on, bolt everything back together in a hunky-dory, ice cream-coated world. That didn't happen for me. I unbolted this, banged on this a little bit, nothing happened. I had to get more severe and more severe to the point where it didn't happen. It wasn't going to happen. So here's what's going on now. So I've had to order a new drive shaft, new brake backing plate, because, yeah, I bent this one up, but I tell you what, they're pretty fragile, and they're not cheap. So if you don't have to damage yours, don't. $90 to $120 for a pair of these dust shields. It's ridiculous. But I had to order new. Obviously, I'm putting in a new drive shaft, new hub, new dust shield, new trailing arm, which I'm not afraid to replace the trailing arm. It was getting pretty rusty anyway. And I'll be able to, and a new sensor. There's a speed sensor that goes right here that I pulled the bolt out. I tried to be finessing that apart. Nothing happened. It broke it. That's about a $39 part. But yeah, that thing is so rusted in there, it didn't let go. Guess who's putting Everseas on a lot of stuff when it goes back together in case I ever have to do this again? Because I plan on keeping this car, another 100,000 plus miles. And this may or may not have to happen again. My biggest fear is if I start hearing bearing noise on the driver's side, here I am, unless it comes apart like this one did, it's going to be another $500 bill to fix it in just parts. Anyway, so yeah, what I've got left to try to do, and I might put this in this video and conclude this as part 1 of part 2. You can see this is loose now. This should be set free. And because there are no core charges on these drive shafts, I'm not sure what I'm going to do there yet. I want to cut it apart. Because actually there's nothing here. There's nothing here that I have to save except for this piece right here. This is the only piece I have to save right now at this point in time. Because I can easily cut these 2 bolts, cut the bolts out of here, get the trailing arm off here, get that bushing or bolt out of the bushing. I hope it breaks free. I couldn't get it to move as is right now. I even set this thing up on a bench right here and wailed on this, and it didn't move. But I noticed on the other side when I cut it free from the body that I was able to grind in between the rubber here and cut that bolt loose and get the arm off, and then the middle piece just actually fell out. So it wasn't stuck there. It was stuck somewhere in between. But talk about an exercise in frustration. So next steps is get the torch out and see if I can start cutting this thing apart. What I may do is just take a torch and concentrate heating up this a whole lot and see if I can get that to pop loose. All you gotta do when something's seized up with rust or frozen like that is make one piece grow more than the other and it'll break loose. So that's what I'm gonna try first, is just sit there and warm the living crap out of that hub and then wail on it a couple more times. If I can get it to break loose, that'd be great. Because this outside shaft here, this hub area will grow faster than this shaft. It should break the bond. If I can make that happen, I can actually get this hub off far enough I can torch it off behind there, save my bracket piece. I need to save this big piece back here that hooks to the car. So that's the long and the short of that. This turned into an ugly mess. Hi there, folks, and welcome back. I'm going to share the nightmarish hell that I've been through while I'm working on this RX330 to get this rear wheel bearing replaced. I would be doing an injustice to everybody out there if I just showed you the quick, easy, no problems happened, and like I took it apart and put it together, because that won't help you. If you've got an 06 or an 05, you live in the Midwest, there's a little bit of rust and corrosion happening, you too can run into the exact same thing I ran into, and I'm going to show you what I did to get through it. And your $120 to $145 bearing job that you bought the bearing for is not going to end there at that price tag. I can almost guarantee you that if you run into what I ran into. So I'm going to share some more, let's call it drama. I don't like drama, but this is what it is that happened while working on this rear end. You saw where the brake drum didn't want to come off. I kind of described some of the things going on there. I'm going to show you some more pieces of the problem that I've been having. Now what we're looking at here is this would be the part facing out towards you. You have your spindle, bearing, brake hub, and everything sticking on here, right? Underneath the car, you've got a control arm that goes from here up to here. That stabilizes the rear end. You got these, I don't know, a trailing arm. I called it wrong. I think it's a trailing arm. These would be your control arms going back here. This is where your strut mounts. This is where your brake caliper mounts. This is where your wheel bearing mounts. This bolt, I thought it was just me. I thought I was just having a little bit of an issue. I thought it was just because it's mounted in rubber that my impact didn't do the job I wanted to do. But that wasn't the case. I'm going to kind of focus you in here. I'll zoom in. What you see on my drill press table is just about 3/4 of the contents of that bolt. I had to drill it, and I thought I could drill it out, drill a hole through it, and knock it out. Nope, that didn't work. I've never had a bolt resist being removed this bad before. Some of you might ask, Michael, why don't you just throw some heat on it? Well, because this rubber bushing's in excellent condition. I've got a little tiny cut here, but that was where I hit it with my cutoff wheel. Everything else, this thing is not cracked or messed up or anything. It's in good shape, so I want to reuse it. I'm going to show you what I did to attack this bolt to try to get it out and the issues I was having, which was, well, I think will amaze you. I've never had a bolt resist me this much. Okay, this is the bolt hole I'm trying to get freed up. This is the bushing that creates the bolt hole. Everything out here is rubber, right? I center punched and drilled this thing so that my drilled hole went like this. And some of you might have said, why don't you drill it in the center? Well, I wanted to have some areas here that I could actually hit it with a punch and knock it loose. I was drilled and I broke through the bushing here. I broke through the edge of, made contact with the edge of the bushing here. No damage there. The bushing's actually quite hard. And drilled all the way through. I drilled through, banged on this a little bit to see if I could knock it loose. It didn't knock loose. That's what I did last night. So I soaked it with some PB Blaster overnight thinking, well, maybe it'll penetrate and it'll help knock this thing loose. Nothing doing. That thing is STUK stuck. So what I did is I took my carbide burr and I ground all this rest of this bolt away here, all the way down to expose this half of the bushing. Thinking, okay, now I should be able to peel these two pieces out of there, right? It's just rust holding it. It's nothing major there, right? Knock it loose. Nope. I ended up grinding the rest of this all the way out, all the way through. I mean, even when I had a little sliver down here still holding, that would not let go. I had to grind it all the way till it turned to dust. When it hit the rust dust is when it was finally gone. Unbelievable. I've never seen anything froze like that was just bolted together. Now, I get it if something was friction welded together because now it's bonded metal to metal type of thing. This is a bolt that was inside this hardened bushing, and I think it's hardened. At least it's softer than a bolt. Let's just say that. So yeah, that's what I had to do to get that thing out of that stupid bushing. It took way more effort than it should have. And I've never had something resist that much on a bolt. Let's talk sensor. Wheel sensor goes through here, right? I pulled this bolt out, the bolt backed right out, no problem. I tried to be very ginger about pulling this sensor out, and I put a blade behind it and a screwdriver and tried to wiggle it and move it. There was nothing having it. It was dang near stuck as tight as this other bolt I was just talking about. I ended up drilling this out. It's all plastic with some magnets and some copper wire in it, but I drilled it out and opened it up, and this is how thin I got it before it actually let go. Unbelievable. Unbelievable. So the fact that these two things happened was amazing in its own right. I'm going to go outside now. I'm going to show you some pieces, and hopefully my camera doesn't fog over too bad because this air conditioned in here, it's over 90 degrees outside. I'm hoping I get you a good clear shot of what it took to get the axle and the wheel bearing freed up from this piece, because I need to reuse this piece. Everything else I bought new because it was absolutely destroyed in the disassembly process, and there was just no two ways around it. I apologize if my microphone's picking up the air conditioner outside here. I'm behind the shop. This is where the bolt flange was. This is where the bolt pattern, I don't know how it went, but this is where the bolt pattern was that holds your wheel on, right? Well, I knew this thing here was so stuck. I wailed and wailed and wailed on this axle to break it loose from this hub, and it would not move. I couldn't get it to move, and I was using my 3-pound, it's at least a 3-pound handheld sledge, wailing on this thing with everything I had, and it wouldn't move. So I thought, well, I'll get the whole assembly out, right, and I'd bring it outside, and I was going to start heating this up. So in the process of heating it up, I'm like, what the heck, why don't I just cut that off so I can get a lot of heat into this here, hopefully, expand it so it let go of that spline. Well, it finally let go, but it didn't let all the way go. I had it heated up pretty good. This was smoking and smoke was rolling off this thing. Finally, I decided, well, let's try hitting it again. It took me 10 solid hits on this thing to slide it from here to where it's at right now. It was that tight. It was that froze up in there. As you can see on the back side here, I took a torch then, and it gave me enough space behind the piece that I salvaged, right, that I could get in here and torch that spline off and get my piece I'm trying to salvage out. So I thought I'd share that with you. This was extremely tight. Nothing on this was wanting to give me a free ride. Now this bolt here for the brake flange piece, that bolt, that backed right out. I put it already in the new flange, or brake backing plate. So yeah, I thought I'd share that with you. So you may run into one that's that stuck. So that's why I pulled this entire assembly out of the car so I could actually finish torching on it, cutting on it, and doing what I need to do without doing it on the car and possibly creating more damage on my car. Anyway, that's the struggles I went through with this guy. And look, bearing still turns. There's probably nothing wrong with it. It was making noise. All right, let's go back in the shop where it's nice and cool. Now, the reason I felt, like I said, I think I'd be doing you guys a severe injustice if I didn't show you the problems you can have, because you'll be thinking you're getting into it and you're going to fix your car real cheap and inexpensive and then realize, holy smokes, I've got in over my head. It could happen. But if you do some of the stuff I do, like I use my drill press, I've got a battery operated grinder with a cutting wheel. It's designed for cutting and slicing steel. I use my drill, like I said, my drill press, and those are all the things I had to have to get this out. Could I have done it all with a hand drill? Most likely, yes. It had taken a lot more effort than my drill press. But it's I don't want people to think that this is just going to be something they can do for cheap or easy. And there may have been a little bit better way to attack this besides the way I did it, but not by much. Not by much at all. This same job, if you'd have taken it into a dealer and they would have had to replace a bunch of parts because they'd have told you, hey, your drive shaft was seized inside your bearing. You need a drive shaft, you need your bearing. They might have been able to salvage the brakes inside the drum, but they got 98,000 miles on them. Of course, the emergency brake does not have 98,000 miles on it, but everything in there was in need of replacement because it had just been sitting around. The inside of the drum was completely rusted. Yes, it probably held really well if you locked the emergency brake up, for no doubt. But also, if you had to actually use it as an emergency brake, it may have been rusty enough that it had just peeled what lining was left on those shoes completely off. So it's worth replacing all that stuff. So what I've done so far is I've got wheel bearing, I got lower trailing arm, I've got a drive shaft, I got a wheel bearing, I got brake pads and brake shoes, I got a spring kit for inside the drum, I've got there's something else. I got the wheel sensor, I've got that. I got all that stuff. I'll put a list of all the prices of everything that it's cost me to do this at the very end of this video. If you want to see what it's going to take you to do something like this. Was it necessary to cut the lower trailing arm? In my opinion, yes. And I'll tell you why. Because I couldn't get at it underneath the body with everything in the way. Very easy to cut it out. And there was no way to salvage that trailing arm anyway on the part that I showed you where I had to drill the bolt out. Nothing was going to give out there. I literally had to cut it off this piece anyway. So it wasn't a mistake. Turned out it was something I was going to have to do anyway. So anyway, let's now I am going to start putting this back together. I'm going to take a wire wheel, get a hold of some of this stuff here, knock some of this little bit of rust off this lower, I don't know, bearing mount, strut mount, whatever you call this piece. You guys leave comments in below. I'm not getting all the names right, nor do I want to. I just want to fix it and make it right. But I want to show you guys what you might have to go through. And then we'll start reassembling this thing piece by piece. And maybe tonight I get it down off the jack stand. Maybe tomorrow morning, maybe tomorrow night. We'll see how time goes. And, you know, I want to do it right. But this is definitely a severe case. If it ain't broke, fix it till it is. No doubt. You know, a guy left that comment on my channel not that long ago, and I've been using that phrase ever since, and kudos to him for lending me that phrase. But this just shows you what some of the trials and tribulations you can go through working on your own car. But if you'd have taken this to a dealer, I might have about $600 wrapped up in this job altogether when I'm done, all said and done. You would have had way more than that. So if you guys have any experiences where you've had where they told you, hey, this thing was stuck, I had to replace, let me know. I'm kind of curious what kind of prices. Did I save myself a lot of effort? Did I buy me a cool tool? You bet I did. But let's see if it was all worthwhile. Let's get down here and start putting it back together. All right, first thing we're going to do is we're going to hang this back in place. Whoops, my light fell. And for now, I'm going to leave that one unhooked because I think I want to hang the drive shaft in here. Get that worked in and set in place, and then I'll hook these other control arms, which seem to have a lot of tension on them, but that's okay. I think that's what I want to do is hang that drive shaft in here. Hey, let me have that. Let me see that. It might actually work by some stroke of luck. That worked crazy good. You saw that, I put the drive shaft, you probably didn't see much of it there, but I slid the drive shaft up through here into the rear end, took my little slide hammer chisel and was able to pop it back into the spot. It's now trapped back in the rear end. I've got this supported with a jack stand under here, so I don't put any undue stress or twist or torque on the rubber boot and take a chance of cutting it. As we can see now, this drive shaft comes clear up into here, gives me room to work. Now I should be able to put my other bolt in. I'm going to put some never sees on these bolts. Who knows, 100,000 more miles, I might be doing this all over again. We're going to see if we can get this car up to 300,000. It might take us 20 years, but I think we can do it. As long as I had it lined up, I could get it then. Put that back. All right, I need the nut. Huh? Under the spline, under the bolt. Alrighty guys and gals, what I've discovered, probably the easiest way to assemble this so far is I hooked the emergency brake spring here onto its lever that runs behind this shoe, and then I put this clip in here to hold this shoe in place. Then I put this adjuster in this area here, got that assembled. Then once I did that, I put this spacer in here. This basically what this does when you push the brake, emergency brake, it causes this to pull this arm over and spread the shoes apart, which will bite on the drum. I then put this retainer in to hold the other side of the shoe in place, and that's pretty much it. There's not much else left to do to this other than put the drum on after I get the hub. So now now that I've got that done, I've got these 2 bolts right here, just started in this hole just to hold things in place. I'm gonna pull those back out, put my hub back on, bolt it, tighten it down, put my center nut back on, tighten it down, and then we'll start messing with the brake drum to get the shoes, the brake drum, how do I want to say this, to get the shoes adjusted so when you push the emergency brake down, it'll actually bite on the drum. When you release the emergency brake, have it so that it doesn't excessively drag. One thing nice about how these things are designed, and this design right here is nothing new, folks. This is an 06. This same exact brake setup, other than having a hydraulic thing up here to spread them out, was the same thing in my 69 Camaro. So this is no new fancy engineering whatsoever. So I'm not sure why Toyota hasn't gone to, by this time in history, gone to the emergency brake hooked into the disc brake. My 81 Subaru had the emergency brake set up in the disc brake on the front end of the car. So this one was, in my opinion, this is way behind the times on engineering, but it still works. And honestly, how often do people use the emergency brakes anyway? So I'm going to set you back over here to the side. I'm going to put the hub back on, tighten it down. Like I said, tighten the center nut up, and then we'll start messing around with that brake drum adjustment. Now that we've got this tightened up, we're ready to, we got a situation where we can slide our brake drum on here and see how these shoes fit, and then reach through here and make an adjustment as to how they're gonna fit. Now as I'm putting this brake drum back on, I'm gonna show you what somebody did to me. See how that's showing half a hole right there where you can't get a screwdriver in there? You got to be able to reach through here and adjust the brake adjuster that's down below. And when you've got the hole half covered like that, it makes it almost impossible to get to and do, especially if you're not familiar with it and you can't see what you're doing. You got to have a lot bigger hole than that to work with. So I'm going to keep working this drum around. See here again, half a hole. See there, a complete hole. And if you go one more, another complete hole. So you got a 2 in 5 chance of getting this on so you can actually take advantage of this hole. So you can make your adjustments on your brakes, on your emergency brakes, by the way. All right, I'm gonna back you up again and we'll go from here. You gotta start hitting record. It helps. You don't get shit. Now I gotta repeat all that all over again. I hate repeating myself. All right, we're back out here, folks, a few days later. This, I had to get it all back together, and I didn't get as much of it videoed as I wanted, but it was pretty uneventful overall. When I put this drum back on, to get that adjusted, that little spider adjusted down at the bottom down here that spreads it apart, was I just turned that and spread it till this drum just slid on without a lot of drag at all. And then what I did is have my wife hit the emergency brake and release it and make sure this could still float without dragging on that brake. And then when she was putting on the brake, I could actually feel it grab when she was only about halfway through the pedal. And then when you go on down, it just gets tighter. So the emergency brake, I feel, is adjusted pretty well. Anyway, that just goes back on. That's done, right? The other thing was the caliper. I noticed on this pad, the caliper was wore. The pad on the inner was wore halfway, let's just say twice as much as the other side, right? What happened, what causes that is this caliper will stick. And it's supposed to slide. These two bolts here have pins that come through this area right here. And it's supposed to float on those pins. And when it can't float, it can't self-center. So as soon as you put on the brakes and push that thing over, it can't float back, and it keeps everything tight, the pad tight up against the rotor. It still lets it go, but it's not how it should be. It should float back to center, not have hardly any drag there at all, and you should be able to, do this pretty freely. Anyway, so I took these out, cleaned them up. They weren't terrible. They had some grit and some crusty stuff in there. So I flushed it out, wire wheeled them off real good, put some Never Sees on the whole thing. You could use, they got brake caliper grease you can use to put back in those. Made sure everything was clean, put it back together, works perfectly now. The other thing, reason I'm back in here today is because the wheel sensor. Now see if I can get you in the shot here. Up through the fender well wall here is your wire that runs down to the wheel sensor. Now that's the wheel sensor I told you how to drill out. Now it passes through the fender wall, and it has a little rubber grommet right here with this much of a pigtail on it that plugs in just inside. Well, that's kind of a pain to get at on the inside. It's behind the seat. I'll kind of give you a idea where it's at. I didn't get enough exposure to it to see it, but I could feel it to know that I had a clip here that I had to collapse, and I could pop it out, snug the new one in, snapped it into place. Everything's hunky-dory. Then basically, put these two bolts in place, and then put the bolt back behind here again where we drilled it out before. There's a 10mm socket on a bolt there. I don't know what millimeter the bolt is, but that holds that back in place. So that's all installed now, and we're back to 100% installed, replaced, and back up to good working order. We're going to put the wheel back on, and we'll be driving it some more, and we can call that a job complete. Let me show you the inside real quick. Now, right behind the back seat, go back underneath here, and this is going to be bound down. You got to pull this plastic loose a little bit. Actually, I didn't have to pull the plastic loose. If you pull this carpet back, you can reach right around the corner here, and you'll find that plug in. And you can't see it, but you can feel it. And you'll be able to unplug it and plug the new one in without any problems at all. At least I didn't have any problems. Now we're going to go ahead and get this wheel back on. I'm going to do my outro. You going to be in it?
No.
You're in it? Well, there it is, folks. That was a big pain in the rear, pun intended, to get that axle out, to get the whole thing apart, put it back together. It's all done now. At least if the other side starts making wheel bearing noise, I feel I've experienced a worst case scenario right here for sure. Other than possibly a few other frozen bolts that they can freeze on the other side that didn't on this side. But anyway, it's done now, and we can drive it. Next thing I'm going to be doing on this car, timing belt. It's due at 100,000 miles. It's got 98,000 miles on it, over 98,000 miles on it. So we're going to get the old timing belt a hold of it next. So stay tuned for that in upcoming videos in between all my other outboard videos. Hope you folks enjoyed this. I hope you found it informative and helpful. As always, don't be afraid to subscribe and give me that thumbs up if you like the video. And everything I purchased in this for this car and this repair, including some new tools, the links will be below in the description. Don't be afraid to follow those links to those products. If it's Amazon products or stuff on Amazon, I get a little bit of a commission for that. It doesn't cost you anything extra to do that. Follow the link to Amazon, buy what you need to buy. I get a little bit of a commission. Helps out the channel. Much appreciated. You guys get out there and have fun. This is Michael saying, if it ain't broke, fix it till it is. I kept fixing it until I didn't know if I was ever going to be on the recovery side of this thing, but it finally did. I always win. I'll see you on the next video. This is Michael, and I'm out. All right, let's go get something to eat.